Can I tell you about the most confusing relationship I ever watched someone go through? From the outside, the other person seemed fine. More than fine, actually. They were thoughtful. They remembered birthdays. They checked in when things were hard. Everyone liked them. But the person I knew who was in that relationship, they were exhausted. All the time. Constantly second-guessing themselves. Walking on eggshells, they couldn't even see. And when they tried to explain what was wrong, they couldn't. Because nothing was obviously wrong. There was no shouting, no name-calling, no dramatic scenes, just a slow, quiet drain. That's what makes the covert narcissist so hard to talk about. Because when you try to describe it, it doesn't sound like much. But when you're living it, it takes everything. So let's go through it. 7 things to look for. And before we start, I want to be clear. These patterns, taken individually, can describe a lot of people who are just having a hard time. What we're looking for is the combination, the consistency, the pattern that holds across time and situations. That's the tell. And subscribe if this is something you've been trying to name. Let's get into it. 1. They always seem to be the one who's suffering the most. Not occasionally, because everyone goes through hard times, but chronically. Every conversation eventually becomes about them and what they're going through. And here's the specific thing to notice. What happens when things go well for you? When you get good news or something you've been working toward finally comes together? Watch what happens. Does the conversation stay with you for a while? Or does something subtly, without it being obvious, pull it back toward their world? A mention of something they're dealing with, a comparison to their own struggles, a way the energy shifts. It doesn't feel like sabotage, it doesn't look like it, but you walk away, feeling like your moment got smaller somehow, like the air went out of it. That's not an accident. 2. They communicate through atmosphere, not words. They rarely tell you directly when something is wrong. What they do instead is create a feeling, a silence, a slightly shorter response than usual. A sigh. That's just audible enough to register. A look that says something without saying anything. And you, because you're someone who pays attention to the people you care about, you pick it up immediately and you try to address it. Is everything okay? Did I do something? And what you often get back is nothing. I'm fine. But the atmosphere doesn't lift, so you keep trying. Here's what's happening. They're communicating without communicating, which means you can't respond to it directly. You can't say, I hear that you're upset about X, because they've never said they're upset about X. You're just managing a vibe indefinitely with no resolution available. That's exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. 3. They can dish it, but they absolutely cannot take it. Any feedback you give, however gentle, however well-intentioned, lands as an attack. And you know this, so you've stopped. You've learned not to suggest alternatives, not to raise concerns, not to question decisions. The cost is too high. But when it comes to you, there's always something, usually framed as concern. I'm only telling you because I care, or framed as observation. I just notice that you tend to, in ways that make it impossible to push back, without sounding defensive. The asymmetry is what you need to pay attention to. In good relationships, both people can give and receive honest feedback. It goes both ways. With this person, it only goes one way, and somehow you're always on the receiving end. 4. They need constant reassurance, but it never actually helps. They ask if you love them, if you really appreciate them, if you'd stay if things got hard. You reassure them. They feel better for a moment. Then the question comes back. Different words, same need. And you try harder. You try to be more consistent, more explicit, more demonstrative, but nothing you do seems to fill it. Here's the thing I want you to notice. When does the reassurance seeking peak? It tends to spike exactly when you pull your attention toward something else, when you get absorbed in your own stuff, when you're focused on a project or a friendship or just your own life. That timing is telling, because if it were really about reassurance, it would. Be consistent. The fact that it ramps up specifically when your focus shifts, that tells you something different is going on. 5. Favors are investments, and you will be reminded of them. They do things for you. Maybe things you didn't ask for. Maybe things that were kind and thoughtful. And at the time, it genuinely felt generous. But somewhere, without you knowing, it went into a ledger. After everything I've done for you, I was there for you when, and now you can't do this one thing. The past generosity gets deployed at exactly the moment it will be most effective, when you're setting a limit or asking for something or pushing back on something. And suddenly you're not just dealing with the current situation. You're dealing with accumulated debt that you didn't know you owed. Genuine generosity doesn't keep score. If it does, it wasn't generosity. It was an investment, and you're being asked to pay the interest. 6. They're competitive, just never openly. Your win somehow becomes about them, not aggressively. Maybe they even congratulate you. But then there's something, a comment about what they could have done in your position, a pivot to their own accomplishments, a way the conversation eventually makes room for them. They want to be the most interesting, the most troubled, the most perceptive. And when you occupy that space, even briefly, something shifts. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But if you pay attention over time, you'll notice they struggle to let you fully have your moments. There's always a reframe, always a way back to them. 7. After time with them, you're just drained. Not always dramatically. Sometimes it's just a persistent tiredness you can't quite explain. A flatness that shows up after you've spent time together. And here's the important thing. Nothing obviously terrible happened. You can't point to anything specific and say that was it, which makes it hard to trust, hard to even acknowledge to yourself. But look at the pattern. Is it consistent? Does time with this person consistently cost you something, and time away from them let you recover? Your energy is a resource. And some people are consistently net withdrawals. Not because of one dramatic thing, but because of the cumulative weight of being managed, monitored, subtly criticized, and always adjusted around. That adds up. So what do you do with this? The hard truth is that naming it doesn't automatically solve it, especially if this person is family, or someone you share a child with, or someone embedded in a life you've built. But here's what I'd offer. You can't fix this by being more understanding, more accommodating, more patient. That's not what the dynamic is asking for. It will just take more. What you can do is get clear on what you're actually dealing with. Stop providing reassurance that never reassures. Stop taking responsibility for moods that aren't yours. Stop paying debts that were never real. You can't control what they do, but you have more control over what you offer. And than you might think right now. That's somewhere to start. Subscribe for more. I'll see you next week.